Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish.
The biggest lesson I've learned recently, this was from Cassidy, is be careful about which bridges you're comfortable burning or not if you write a snarky article.
Mm.
Uh, I think just more than anything, these guys have taught me relationships in this line of work are very important.
And they're
It's a
fragile as well.
and what?
And they're a bit fragile as well.
Yeah, very, very fragile. Um, because for how big the world of professional wrestling is, it's also very small. And people know people. Cassidy knows everybody, and
Oh,
so
yes.
if I write an article with a snarky headline about somebody, there's a very good chance that person could like text Cassidy and be like, "Hey, what's up with this? Why did this guy do this?"
Mm.
And I stand by my work, and I don't know how much of my stuff that you've actually read, but I
Mm.
have become kind of known as like the snarky headline guy because I will call out people if they say or do something stupid. Like Logan Paul says a lot of weird things sometimes. Obviously Hulk Hogan, and so I'm not scared to write those articles, but you do kind of have to be prepared, like, is this going to affect a relationship or even like affect coverage? Like will this burn a bridge?
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and today I'm back with another interview. This time, I'm joined by the one and only Nick Perkins from bodyslam.net and Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So, welcome to the show.
Hey Tom, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Great to be here.
I'm really excited to chat with you, my friend. Big fan of your work. Always excited to chat with cool people. So, if we
Yeah.
take it back, where do you first discover wrestling, Nick, as an overall fan?
Sure. So I, like most people, was a kid. I was about 10 years old. It was 1997, and a lot of kids will say that they were flipping through the channels and they saw like Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior or the Legion of Doom or whoever else, and they just saw these huge, amazing superheroes and they were hooked. For me, it was a little bit different because I
Mm.
was flip I was flipping through the channels and I just saw a couple of, I mean, kind of regular looking guys. One guy was standing and one guy was actually in a wheelchair and they were yelling at each other, and the guy in the wheelchair said something that caused the other guy to kick him in the face. And he kicked the guy like fell backwards out of his wheelchair, and I was absolutely aghast. It was because I had never seen that. I felt so bad for the poor guy that just got kicked, and from that moment on I was hooked. And that was an interview segment with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. So they were the first two wrestlers that I ever saw.
Was that an episode of the Heartbreak Hotel? I believe that's what.
It might have been. Yeah, I've gone back and tried to seek it out again, and it could be. It was right after Bret Hart turned into a heel after WrestleMania 13. So
Mm. You brought up Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart there. I don't think I'd be doing my job as a as the wrestling journalist, as people call me sometimes.
that's a cool nickname.
Bring up the Montreal Screwjob to you, Nick.
Yes, the $1 million question, the Montreal Screwjob. I wish I could believe that it was a work, but I don't. I think it was just a really bad day of the, kind of like a bad month at the office. I think that both men, Bret Hart and Vince McMahon, were at fault a little bit. I think they both kind of, it was just the perfect mix of ego and and anger and frustration. And Brett thought that he was kind of a made man in the WWF. He literally considered WWF to be family and never thought that something like that would happen. I think Vince McMahon, as we've all come to know, just views them as assets and as playthings, and didn't take the relationship with Bret Hart as seriously as Bret did. So I think both guys have some fault. I think both guys have some good points, but I feel bad more than anything. It was just I feel bad because Bret Hart never really captured that same chutzpah that he had in WCW that he had in WWF. Vince McMahon did well for a really long time, but now we all know where he's at. So it's a bad situation all around.
You talk about it being a bad situation there. Oh, I was trying to find a segue, but maybe not so good. But like something that's considered, some people consider this a good match, some people consider this a bad match. As Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart were the first two wrestlers you ever saw, what's your thoughts on their Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 the year before?
Yeah, awesome question. To your point, that was actually the first. I don't know how old you are, Tom, but that was the first wrestling VHS tape I ever rented. I was going through the local Blockbuster and kind of diverted from the usual horror section that I usually go to look at the wrestling videos. And I saw it was right when I was kind of beginning my fandom, and I saw the cover of WrestleMania 12, and it was Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, and then it was also Diesel and The Undertaker. And I knew a little bit about Diesel because he was in WCW at the time now. So that was like a total dream match for me. So I was psyched to pick up that VHS. And I got it. I rented it. I watched it 1,000 times. I love the Iron Man match, to answer your question. I know some people don't like Iron Man matches because you basically just have to watch like the last 5 minutes, like a
Mm.
basketball game. But if you appreciate just the art of professional wrestling and the way they do these things and just the athleticism, I think it's an incredible match.
I understand what you're saying completely there. What
What about you? Are
about
you do you like it, or are you not as big of a fan?
so I respect it more than I like it or dislike it. As
That's fair.
somebody that has, how do I put this, grown up with matches that have more going on than that Iron Man match, like other Iron Man matches, I respect we had to have a match like that to get some of the Iron Man matches like MJF
Sure.
Danielson, for
Yeah.
example, and or Brock Angle is one that comes to mind, and things
Yeah.
like that. So I respect it more than I have a dislike or a like for it, if
Yeah,
that makes
that's fair.
sense.
Of course.
I see behind you there's a Batman poster as well, my friend. So
Yes.
I'm curious to talk about just for a second. What comes first? Is it Batman or is it wrestling in your life?
Ooh, those are literally my two biggest passions. I didn't talk to a lot of girls in school. Batman, I think Batman was first because if you can see, I don't know if you can see this. That's a frame from Batman 66,
Mm.
the Adam West show, and that was on just every afternoon when I was a kid, and it was like it was the first Batman that I watched. The Keaton Batman, Batman 1989, is my favorite movie of all time. I think Michael Keaton's the best Batman. It's great. And so that happened a little bit earlier. So I would say Batman first, pro wrestling second, but right now as a grown man, they're neck and neck for my two favorite things.
Thoughts on my favorite movie of all time, uh, The Dark Knight Rise. Sorry, not Dark Knight, Batman: The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dark Knight Rises. That's a bold choice. The Dark Knight, I think, is incredible. I love the Nolan movies as well. I love all the Batman movies. There's not I even like Batman and Robin because I was like 10 years old when that came out. So I was
Hmm?
the perfect age for that. But I think The Dark Knight is probably the best made Batman movie. It's like it feels like this epic crime drama with the Batman and Joker. And so I'm a huge fan of that as well.
Heath Ledger as the Joker. Thoughts?
Uh Incredible. Role of a lifetime. I think it's unfair to compare him to Jack Nicholson, who is my first Joker,
Mm.
because you just can't. You can't compare Heath Ledger to Jack Nicholson, just like you can't compare Jack Nicholson to Mark Hamill in the animated series. Like
Mm.
they're all different versions of the Joker, and they're all amazing.
We talked about who is your favorite Batman best Joker for you?
I will say Jack Nicholson is my favorite Joker, just again because he's the one I grew up with, and I think he had a little bit more of a playful side. And I know Heath Ledger like cracked some jokes and whatnot, but Joker was like he was goofy. Like Batman '89 was regarded as like very dark and epic, but if you watch it now, like it was pretty goofy a lot. And I think Jack Nicholson had such a great time. I still have nightmares about Jack Nicholson's Joker, so he has etched his name in my brain.
What about Joaquin Phoenix as the current Joker?
Yeah, I watched the first movie and really liked it. I have not watched the second one yet. It's
Do
on my
not,
list.
do
Don't
not.
do it.
If you love the first one, leave that there. That's my opinion.
Okay. I might just do that. I don't know if I really necessarily consider him to be the Joker. I think he it was a great movie. I loved the original Joker, but I don't know if I hold him in the same regard as the other ones. I did like Jared Leto a little bit, I will say. Not as much in Suicide Squad, but in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice
Hmm.
League, I thought he was great.
That's really, really cool. And a tangent I didn't expect to go on, but as a Batman fan myself, when I see anyone with Batman memorabilia, it always comes up on the podcast.
Oh
So
yeah,
when you talked about renting WrestleMania 12 there, Nick, and things like that, and that being sort of your, for lack of a better word, gateway into renting wrestling. So how do you start consuming wrestling from that point then?
sure, great question. So my Blockbuster, we had two video stores in my town. We had Blockbuster and we had Hollywood Video, and
Mm.
both of them had. It wasn't a huge section, but they had a section of like I think they called it special interest genre. And so there were quite a few wrestling tapes. I remember WrestleMania 12. They had WrestleMania 14, which was awesome. They had a lot of VHS from 1998. So I
Mm.
watched a lot of those pay-per-views, like 6 months to a year after they actually aired. But I also was lucky enough to grow up right in the thick of the Monday Night War era. So 97, 98. My bedtime was 10 p.m. Eastern, which meant that I had to go to bed like an hour before the show ended. And so I remember I was lucky enough to have a TV in my bedroom. So I would close my door, say my goodnights, and then I would put like a blanket in front of the crack of the door at the bottom of it and just watch it very low and just kind of make sure that I've got my finger on the power button in case somebody walks in.
Mm.
And that's how I watched the majority of Raw. And then we kind of got a hack. I don't know if you guys had it in the UK, but in America, we had Raw that aired from, um, I'm Mountain West time. So it aired from like 7 to 9, which I
Yeah,
guess is 9 to 11 Eastern time. I don't know what it is UK time, but
like
we would
4 in the
have
morning.
Raw.
That's all I'm gonna
Yeah.
say.
Oh, you poor people. Wow. But we would get to watch Raw, and then Nitro would actually air a replay, and so it was the perfect night of wrestling because you'd watch Raw live, and then you'd watch Nitro just right as it replayed, and it was great. You got like a solid 4 to 5 hours of wrestling every Monday, and it was it was a great time to be a wrestling fan, especially at that age of like 10,
Oh yeah.
11, 12, telling your teachers and bullies to suck it and everything. That was my childhood.
You brought up there how you used to watch Raw. What was your biggest quiet mark out moment, if you know what I mean? So marking out enough that you celebrated, but not so much that your parents were like, you're grounded, if you know what I mean.
There are three memories that stick out. Two of them I had to do quietly, but the third one I'll get into. But this might have even been the same show, or at least like within a week of each other. But it was right in the thick of DX, kind of making life miserable for Commissioner Slaughter, right? And Slaughter ordered Shawn Michaels and Triple H to fight each other for the
Yeah,
European Championship.
I've seen this. I remember this
Yeah.
actually.
So it was the Christmas episode, I think. It was one of my favorite episodes of Raw. But through the whole night, they're teasing dissension between Shawn Michaels and Triple H. China's trying to play peacekeeper, and then it finally gets to the match. And like I'd only been watching for a few months at that point, but I knew like this is a big deal. Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, the two members of DX fighting. This is huge. And then they did the bit, kind of like the finger poke of doom before the finger poke of doom. They kind of Shawn Michaels laid down for Triple H, even though he says he doesn't lay down for anybody. And Triple H got the 1, 2, 3. They celebrated together. They pulled one over. Shawn Michaels proved he did not give a shit. Sorry for the language, if but he did not care at all
My
about the
editor
Union
will bleep it
Jack.
out with the
Yeah. Um, but it was the funniest, smartest like thing that I had ever seen. Like they got me hook, line, and sinker. They got Commissioner Slaughter hook, line, and sinker. It was so fun to watch. So there was that one, but the time that I did like a silent yes and tried to like keep my voice down was right around that same time the Undertaker and Kane had started their feud. And it was after Kane debuted and had attacked Undertaker a few times, but Undertaker the week before had saved Kane from a bunch of people attacking him. And on this night, uh, Undertaker like saved him again and then like gave his little salute to Kane, and Kane gave it back. And for just a little bit, it looked like they were on the same side. This was before like they had ever teamed together. It's before WrestleMania 14. But for just a week, it looked like they were on the same side, and that was the coolest thing. I think the Undertaker and Kane is the greatest story WWF has ever told.
I would
Um,
agree.
yeah, I it just especially those first couple of years,
Just don't
it was
watch the
great.
2010 stuff.
Yeah, but maybe not that so much. I know people have mixed feelings about the Undertaker and Kane now. Back then, I think that's something they can really be proud of. And then my final moment, and this was the moment where literally like we were screaming, we were jumping up and down. It was in 1999. Vince McMahon had just fired Shawn Michaels as the commissioner of the WWF. And prior to that, Shawn Michaels had been a heel. He was with the corporation,
Mm.
but he did something, and so Vince McMahon fired him. And for the first time in a long time, Shawn Michaels hit the sweet chin music on Vince McMahon, gave him the suck it sign, and that was just Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. And so to see that, like me and my buddy Adam were watching in my living room, and we took our shirts off. We were like jumping on my furniture, doing the suck it sign to each other. It was the loudest I've ever like celebrated something. It was so fun.
That's really, really cool. Just to go back a second, Nick,
Sure.
you talked about earlier how much of a big deal Shawn Michaels versus Triple H was during the Attitude Era, like the hype for that. So, what is your thoughts on their match in 2002 at SummerSlam?
Yeah, I think that if you have to show somebody one Shawn Michaels match, I think you could show him that. And the fact that he hadn't wrestled in 4 years is incredible. I think that match proved why he is the greatest of all time because he came back like he hadn't missed a beat. It's cliche to say now. Everybody says, yeah, he came back like he hadn't missed a beat. He really didn't, though. He was jumping off ladders, he was diving through tables, he was more than anything, he was telling a story, like with his back injury and whatnot. Um, and when it was on some documentary, Triple H was talking about it, and he said that before the match, he had seen Shawn Michaels' mom, and he
That was on WB Rivalries, I want to
yeah,
say. Like
yep,
a network thing.
yeah,
I've seen that. I know what you're talking about.
and he said like, and this really endears me to Triple H. He said that he told his mom, Shawn Michaels' mom, I won't let anything happen to your boy. And that gives me chills, and that just
Mm.
makes me almost want to cry because of how close they were and how much he wanted to take care of Shawn in that match.
That's really, really cool. What is your thoughts then, as a big Shawn Michaels guy, his current role in WWE? when it comes to NXT, developing talent, and things like that, my friend.
Sure, I think he's doing a great job. I think it is so fun that Triple H and Shawn Michaels, DX, are basically running WWE. You know, when they branded their DX sign on the corporate headquarters in Stanford back in 2006, that was quite a bit of foreshadowing.
I
I
never
think
even
he's
thought of
doing
that, but yeah.
yeah, I think he's doing a great job. I think NXT, it's not quite where it was at like NXT's height when it was Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole and Kevin Owens and Finn Balor and things like that. But for what it is and for the talent they have now, I think he's doing a great job.
That's really, really cool, my friend. As someone, we'll get into this in a minute. How do you then go from I'm a fan, I want to start talking about wrestling and covering wrestling, my friend?
Sure. Um, so I've always kind of been a writer type. I won the Young Authors Contest in third grade in elementary
So did
school.
I.
Really? Nice.
Mm.
So like once you get that first accolade and a teacher or somebody is like, I enjoyed what you wrote. That's like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna do this forever now.
Mm.
And I did. I was lucky enough. I did journalism stuff throughout high school. In college, and I think my sophomore year of college, MTV was hiring one person from every state in America to cover the 2008 election. And so I got hired, luckily, to represent Wyoming, which is where I'm from.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
for MTV during their Choose or Lose campaign during the first Obama administration, the first year of that, and the lead up to it. And so that was when I really started to like do professional journalism. I had to make videos and write articles about heavy stuff. And now I look back and I'm like, you should not let a 20-year-old write about this stuff. I was clueless. I'm sure some of it was fine, but I wish I had that opportunity now as like a full grown man.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was a really really cool experience, and to be able to, I'm sure you get it, to be able to write something or produce a video and know that people are reading it and watching it, like
Mm.
that is such a high for me. And then when people say, hey, you did an okay job with this, the best feeling in the world. So that kind of dictated my career for the remainder of 20 to now I'm 37 years old. So I've been dabbling in reporting for about 17 years. My current job, I am a reporter for a local news outlet here in my hometown, Oil City News. If you guys ever want to check it out, it's oilcity.news.
That's really
Um,
cool.
so I get to do that for my day job, but I wanted to do the one thing that I'm good at and apply it to the one thing that I really, really love, and
Mm.
that's pro wrestling. And so I'm sure everybody does the same thing. You read the writers that you really like. For me, it was Jason Powell with ProWrestling.net. I
Mm.
think I'd love to shout him out. I don't know if you've had him on. You should.
I
Uh,
haven't, but would love to.
yeah, Jason Powell, I think, doesn't get the credit that he deserves for what he's done with ProWrestling.net. Um, so I would always read him. Like anytime there was a Raw or a pay-per-view, I would always immediately go check his website and kind of just read his opinion about it. And really really liked it. And so one day I just emailed him and I was like, "Hey, my name's Nick, and I'm a big fan. I've never done this before, but I would love to. Do you think you might have anything open? I'm not looking for money or anything. I just want to write about it." And he got
Mm.
back to me very quickly and was like, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." So ProWrestling.net was actually my very first outlet that I wrote for.
That's really
Um,
cool.
I got to write a lot of really cool things. I did various blogs. I did some show recaps. I got to interview Colt Cabana and do a story on him,
Oh,
which I'm
wow.
very proud of. Um, Called it the heart of wrestling because he had the Art of Wrestling podcast. And I think Colt Cabana, speaking of people that don't get the credit they deserve, I think Colt Cabana, man, oh man, wrestling podcasting would not be what it is today
Oh,
without Colt
definitely
Cabana.
not.
Yeah. So I got to write that. I got to write a really cool story on Eddie Kingston, something that when I'm like emailing samples to people, I still include that because I'm very proud of it. So
Mm.
Jason Powell really gave me my first start, and then I just kind of I bounce around and I've worked for different websites. Right now I'm at bodyslam.net, which is a huge thing, and we can get more into that. Um, but that's how it came to be for me.
You talk about body slam there. Actually, first of all, you talk about being given your first big break by emailing the guy and just shooting your shot, as we say in the
Yeah.
UK here. So, how much do you think your traditional journalism background helped you, though? The fact that you already had a qualification, you already had samples of your work. How much do you think that helped you to sort of get your feet wet in the wrestling journalism space?
Sure, that's a really good question. And I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sure that I emailed when I emailed Jason, I probably included some stories. And luckily, and now that I'm remembering it, when I was working for MTV, I got to interview Matt Stryker and Victoria
Oh wow.
because they were WWF or E at the time was doing that SmackDown Your Vote campaign, right? You
Mm,
remember that?
I remember this year.
Yeah, and so I don't remember how I wrangled it, but I ended up getting to interview them for a story. And so I had that story and that sample that I could kind of email to people and pass along. And I had a couple others that I'm sure probably helped. But I think with Jason, I think it helped, but I think just having something that I had written before just for him to be able to see like what my strengths and weaknesses are and what my voice was. I think that helps more than anything. So even if I didn't have professional credentials, I think if I just had like a blog or something that showed what I could do, I think it would have been the same.
I understand what you're saying completely there. Before we get into the body slam stuff, this was sort of my main topic that I wanted to discuss with you. I'm always curious to talk to journalists about how the wrestling media can improve when it comes to
Oh,
the I don't know how to phrase it, but I know what I mean.
sure.
Where would you want to see wrestling journalists improve as someone that does traditional journalism yourself? What can they take from traditional journalism, etc.?
Yeah, that is a great question, Tom. And to be honest, like I don't know if I should be any sort of authority on this. I can speak about it from a journalist perspective, but there are people in the wrestling world that have a lot more and better opinions about this. But since you asked, I actually, and maybe you saw it, just last week, I think I tweeted everybody on the internet was once again kind of complaining about why didn't anybody ask Triple H about the lawsuit at the press conference? The same old song and dance that you get after every pay-per-view.
Mm.
Um, and I wrote a tweet, and I do believe this, and I do stand by this, that a lot of the people in those rooms, the people that get the credentials and that get to go and sit in the press box and go to the press conferences, I don't think a lot of them consider themselves to be wrestling journalists. I think they consider themselves to be content creators, which is a very different thing and requires
Mm.
a very different skill set. I, for instance, could not be a content creator. I can't go onto a YouTube and just have reaction videos and do stuff like that. I can't do it. I'm not good at it. And I don't even think I'm likable enough for it.
Oh, I
Um,
do.
well, thank you, Tom. You would know you're likable enough to do it. But I think a lot of these
Okay.
people don't consider themselves to be professional wrestling journalists or content
Mm.
creators. And so they go and they ask questions, and that's fine. And they'll even interview some wrestlers, but that's not necessarily journalism. It's it's interviewing people, and I don't want to demean or diminish what these people are doing, because what they're doing is great, and a lot of the people there are doing really great work. But especially on a topic like the Vince McMahon lawsuit. Like that requires so much more than what like a wrestling content creator has the skill set to do. You can't you can't just ask people questions and then expect them to give you an answer that is satisfactory. You
Mm,
cannot as a journalist print things without them being 100% true and even more than true, provable, right?
yeah,
So especially with a subject like this, it's a very hard thing to write about, which is why you see the actual mainstream publications like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and things like that. They're the ones that are breaking these stories because they
yeah,
know how much work is required to break them. So I think I think a distinction needs to be made between wrestling journalism and wrestling content creation. I said this in my tweet. Sean Ross Sapp very deliberately says that he's not a journalist because he knows what goes into that. And the irony of it is that he probably acts like more of a journalist than anybody else in this space.
yeah,
So that's why he's kind of the best at what he does. But there there are a lot of people in the wrestling space that publish hearsay and backstage news and things about people's divorce and people's contracts. And that to
yeah.
me is
Obviously, that's been a big thing lately.
yeah. And to me, that's not journalism because you're speaking on hearsay and you're writing about what you heard third hand, fourth hand, fifth hand. You're not backing things up with proof a lot of the time. And then when you get called on it, and I'm kind of speaking about somebody in particular, but I'm not going to say their name. When you get called on it to not offer any sort of like revocation or apology or like, hey, I was wrong. Like in journalism, if you print something that is wrong, you have to print a retraction.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what
or
retractions
you,
are for.
yeah, or you lose all credibility. And there are some wrestling journalists that kind of are wrong a lot and don't offer an apology or a retraction. And I think that proves to me that I wouldn't want that person covering actual important stories. You know?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely there. Just to double back on something you said before this, you said in your own words, you're not likable enough and things like that to do a reaction stream or things like that. So not how did it come about, but like what made you think, oh, this body slam opportunity with reviewing Raw will be fun or a good fit? I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just genuinely curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And honestly, and later on we can get into how I started with Body Slam in particular. But honestly, I was just really excited about the debut of Raw on Netflix. And
Mm.
so I just messaged Cassidy, our editor, and was like, hey, if I wanted to try to do like a post-show video, would that be cool? And he set me up with Corey Hayes, who is also, speaking of up and comers, like he's really starting to make a name for himself. I know that you've wanted to have him on, and I'm sure that'll happen soon. But
I hope
he
so.
yeah, I'm sure it will. But he set me up with Corey and was just and I told Cassidy from the start. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this every week. I don't know if it will be good or entertaining or like if anybody will watch, but we'll give it a shot. And we did, and we got, we're not getting Fightful numbers or Denise Salcedo numbers, but we got a decent chunk of viewers, mostly because of Corey. And it was fun, kind of like what you and I are doing. It's fun to just talk about wrestling with pro wrestling fans.
Mm.
Um, so we did a couple shows, and then this past week, we brought on JPJ Loves Gaming, who is another content creator, another video guy. Have you had him on before?
Several times. He's a very good friend of mine, actually. Uh,
Yes.
I've had him on my show several times. I've had him on shows that I've done for other people. I've been on his flagship show, Between Two Beards, and things like
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah,
you know that
Jay's a very good friend of mine.
yeah, so he's like a great guy. Like he's just a cool guy to talk to.
Mm.
So we did the show last week and it was the three of us now and that like the dynamic like I liked what Corey and I were doing but bringing him on and just that three-person dynamic was it was really fun and so I see I think this will keep happening moving forward and I think I have the least to do with how successful it may or may not be.
No, man, you're very good at what you do. You brought up there JPJ bringing a new energy to the show and things like that. So I'm curious to talk about how do you develop a chemistry with someone though? Because he even said in the stream, we literally just met when I entered in the Zoom window. We've never spoke or anything. How do you develop that chemistry like so quickly? Because it seemed like you guys were just old friends.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a really nice compliment to hear. And I don't know. JPJ was right. The first conversation we had was 2 minutes before pressing record. And so I think it helps that like I knew Corey a little bit, but even then, like we weren't best friends until we started talking on our first show. But
Mm,
I think I don't know. I think it helps when you have like outgoing personalities, which I am. I know JPJ is. Corey isn't as outgoing, but like once he's excited about something, like he'll get into it a little bit, but he's kind of the more like cerebral, like let
mm,
me think about what I'm gonna say before I say it. And then like you can't shut him up. But I think it just helps if people are kind of I don't know, just willing to kind of be open and willing to let other people talk and kind of take
mm.
control.
I understand what you're saying completely there. So is recap something you want to get into more then, Nick?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm excited about these Raw shows because I'm excited about Raw on Netflix. Like we've had a lot of really good shows since they made the switch. And it's fun to talk about. And like I said, like more than anything, like viewers are great and shares and retweets. That's all fun. But for me, the best part of it and the reason why I like doing it is because I just like talking about wrestling with people. Like I said, I live in Wyoming. I live in a small-ish town called Casper. Um, Not a lot of wrestling fans here. Like my best friend, thankfully, is a wrestling fan, and I have maybe one other uh friend that's a fan. And luckily, my girlfriend like tolerates it, so I can
Mm,
talk about it a little bit. But I'm not surrounded by people who I can talk to. So to get on and to talk with people that know just as much, if not more, than me about this thing that I love, like that's the funnest part. So as long as it's fun, and as long as it's not making me ignore other priorities. Like I could see it happening. What even got me interested in doing videos is for a little while, myself and Cam Hawkins, who is like the belle of the ball right now,
another
and
good dude. Another good
yeah,
dude. Been on the
great
show.
guy.
Been on the show
Um,
before. A good dude.
yeah, he's one of the cool. Like if I ever think I'm cool, I put myself up to him, and I'm like, oh my god, I've never been cool a day in my life. He's the coolest. But he and I did a show for a while that covered kind of the history of Degeneration X because we were both big fans
Oh
of that.
yeah.
Yeah, so we
Mm,
did that for a while and it was really fun. He got very busy, obviously. I got busy, so we kind of put that on the back end. But that's what kind of got me interested in doing videos in the first place because otherwise I would have been just happy like sitting behind my desk typing articles.
mm. So you talked about there how what got you interested in the videos. We've done this backwards, Nick, but sometimes it's just how conversations go. You know,
Yeah.
as an interviewer. How do you then join up with the great crew that is Body Slam, though?
Yeah, same thing I did with Jason Powell. I messaged Cassidy on Twitter and I said, "Hey man, I really like what you do. Uh, Here's what I've done for ProWrestling.net. Here's some other work samples of mine. Like, are you looking for contributors?" And again, I said, like, I'm not looking for money really. I'm just kind of looking for exposure and experience and more than anything, just the chance to learn from people who are better than me,
Mm,
which Cassidy is, and the team that he's cultivated. Like they're a very good team. We have people and they go kind of unnoticed and unheralded, but we have people that are literally writing like 10, 15, 20 articles a day, and they're like Brady Alexander, Corey Brennan did it for a long time. Like these guys are really putting in the work so that guys like me can come in like once a week and write like a snarky article or a feature story and get the glory. So those guys I really want to shout out. But I told Cass, I was like, if you're looking for somebody, like I'd love to do it. And he didn't even hesitate. He took a big chance on me. He was like, yeah, man, come on board. And the first article I wrote was about DIY and kind of their histories as a team and as a feud. And kind of since then, I've gotten to write a lot of really cool stuff that Cassie's given me the opportunity to do. So it's been great.
That's really, really cool. Something you brought up there was wanting to learn from people, other people in this space. What
Yeah.
is something you've learned from maybe Cass, from working with him, uh, Corey, even JPJ, who you've worked with once, and Seahawk, as we call him? What is something you've learned from everyone you've worked with?
That's a really great question. Something that I've learned. Let me think for just a minute. The biggest lesson I've learned recently, this was from Cassidy, is be careful about which bridges you're comfortable burning or not if you write a snarky article.
Mm.
Uh, I think just more than anything, these guys have taught me relationships in this line of work are very important.
And they're
It's a
fragile as well.
and what?
And they're a bit fragile as well.
Yeah, very, very fragile. Um, because for how big the world of professional wrestling is, it's also very small. And people know people. Cassidy knows everybody, and
Oh,
so if
yes.
I write an article with a snarky headline about somebody, there's a very good chance that person could like text Cassidy and be like, "Hey, what's up with this? Why did this guy do this?"
Mm.
And I stand by my work, and I don't know how much of my stuff that you've actually read, but I
Mm.
have become kind of known as like the snarky headline guy because I will call out people if they say or do something stupid. Like Logan Paul says a lot of weird things sometimes. Obviously Hulk Hogan, like, and so I'm not scared to write those articles, but you do kind of have to be prepared, like, is this going to affect a relationship or even like affect coverage? Like will this burn a bridge? So you do have to be careful about that. And in that lesson, I have learned, and this really was a big kind of life lesson and work lesson for me lately. I was texting the uh the PR guy with TNA Wrestling, and I told him I don't want to ever be in a position where I make this business worse.
Mm.
I only want to make it better, and I don't want to write stories that tear people down. I want to write stories that lift people up. And
Mm.
so that's kind of been the big lesson that I'm learning and kind of applying to what I do now.
That's really, really cool. What is an article then to sort of that you're like, okay, that was snarky. Maybe we shouldn't have gone there.
Yeah. There were a few, and again, I don't regret them because like if if somebody says or does something stupid, they deserve to be called out on it.
I also believe, and I don't know how you feel about this, if you don't cringe when you look at your old work, you haven't improved.
Hmm. Absolutely. I'm not gonna say the headline because I do cringe when I think about it now, but it was right when TNA rehired Blanchard, Tessa Blanchard,
Hmm.
um, and her and Moose posted a photo together, which kind of got the collected blood boiling of the internet, and so I covered that, and that's actually I think what led to a conversation that I had with the TNA PR guy. But like I said, it was a lesson for me because it's easy to write an article with a snarky headline that will get, a lot of people laughing, that'll get likes, that'll get the quote tweets and whatnot. But what is the cost of that? And is that going to burn a bridge or cost a relationship? And that's something that I honestly have been thinking about a lot lately is what is kind of the return on investment and what's the best way to do this?
It's really, really cool. You brought up earlier that you want to do more work within the wrestling media, but you don't want it to affect time with your girlfriend, time and having a life. Balance, work-life balance is the phrase I'll use. So how
Yeah.
do you deal with burnout as a creator, Nick? And how do you have that work-life balance sort of thing?
You're asking the wrong guy because I am a self-admitted workaholic. Um, I, I, I spend pretty much all day when I'm working in front of my computer. So let's say I wake up at 10 a.m. because I work from home. I can kind of make my own schedule. So
Mm.
let's say I wake up at 10 a.m. I'm working from like 10:05 to midnight a lot of the time. And I'm not actually very good at work-life balance. That's another thing that I'm trying to get better at. Because I do, like I live with my girlfriend, and so it's easier than like if we didn't live together and we're trying to spend time together. But there's a difference between living with somebody and actually spending time with that person.
Oh, definitely.
And I've told her like I want to spend time with you. So we do. We have designated date nights. Thursday night is our date night, and then Saturday, kind of the whole day and night, is when we spend time together. And so that's when we really get our quality time. I try to do my work schedule in that I'll work my real job from say 10 to 6 or 7 p.m. And then 7 p.m. on is when I'll do like the freelance stuff, whether it's body slam stuff or PWI or I write for different like horror websites like Fangoria, Dread
Mm.
Central. That's kind of when I do like my freelance stuff is those final few hours.
How did the PWI opportunity come about then, my friend?
Well, you'll sense a theme here. I literally messaged the editor in chief, Kevin, and was like, hey, actually, years and years ago, when I was first starting out in the wrestling business, I emailed Stu Stacks, who was the old editor in chief of PWI before Kevin took over. And I emailed Stu and said, hey, I'm a big fan, like PWI. I buy it every month from my local grocery store, magazine rack. Huge fan. I would love to write for you. Like, is that something? And he was like, well, here's a sample idea. Write me an article based on
Mm.
this idea, and we'll see. And I did, and he got back to me, and he didn't even have to do this, so it was cool that he did. But he got back to me and said, "Hey, like this is good, but it's not quite like the voice that we produce in our magazines. It's not quite
Mm.
what we're looking for. So get a bit more experience, and then come back," which was great advice. Um, and the advice was like, hey, read, if you want to work someplace, read what they're putting out and then try to figure out what their voice is and what their
Emulate their
style.
voice almost.
Yeah. And so years went by and I tried to better myself, got a lot more experience, read a lot more PWI magazines. And then Kevin took over as the editor in chief, and I messaged him on Twitter and explained, like, hey, I talked with Stu years ago. He told me like to get better and come back. Here's what I've done since then. Is there anything or any sort of chance? And he said, Nick, I like your writing. We've got kind of a full deck right now, but if something comes up where I feel like you would be a good fit, I'll let you know. Which was super cool of him. And then eventually, I think maybe like 6 months later, he reached out and said, "Hey, we've got this story that we want to do on Leo Rush, and kind of his journey post WWE and kind of his career after being let go. Is this something you'd want to do?" And I outwardly I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, that I think I could make that work." Inside, I'm like, Oh my God, yes! I'm taking my shirt off again and giving the suck it sign and things like that. Because PWI really had been a dream for my entire career. Because I did, like, I remember riding my bike down to the Safeway and getting PWI or Inside Wrestling or The Wrestler or Wow magazine from Bill Apter. Like that's how I learned about pro wrestling was through those magazines. So to be able to have the opportunity to write for PWI is still like the coolest thing I've done in the wrestling space.
That's really, really cool. I should have asked this before we did this, but what comes first? Is it PWI or Body Slam?
Uh, Great question. I think Body Slam. I think Body Slam came first because then I had like some more thorough articles that I could show Kevin. Like I wrote one about the wrestling club kind of before, not to sound like a hipster, but before like the
Before they
union
blew
took
up, for
off.
lack of a better word.
Yeah, I got to talk with Victor and kind of tell his story. That's still the story that I'm most proud of getting to write. And so I think I probably showed Kevin that, and I think that's maybe what told him like I could spin a good yarn, could write an okay story.
That's really, really cool. Every recap I've seen you in, dude, I'm curious to talk about this. You're in a very nice suit. So
Yeah,
why is it important to you that recaps, podcasts like this, you're dressed in a nice suit?
yeah. I'm a big fan of Mad Men. Watch Mad Men a lot. Have you seen the show?
I have, yeah, yeah.
It's great. In addition to working as a reporter, I've also worked in the ad agency world. And so I just like to emulate that. But even more than that, I find that like that dress for success line really
Mhm.
does work. So like I said, I work from home a lot. It would be very easy for me to just wear sweatpants and a t-shirt and be fine. But I've found for me that if I put a suit on, if I tie my tie, if I make my bed, I feel more energized and kind
Oh
of
yeah,
ready to do so I like to do that. I also am a big fan of John Alba, so I like to copy him and steal his style. He looks way better than I do, but he's a big inspiration too.
that's really, really cool. Why does John inspire you so much, my friend? As somebody that's had him on the channel a couple of times and who thinks he's a very good dude.
Oh, yeah, more than anything, I think John is just like one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. But he's another one that actually does work professionally as a reporter or like a newscaster or sportscaster. And he applies that to the world of wrestling. And I think that's why you kind of see a difference in quality between John and a lot of other people, is because
Mm,
he does kind of apply that same technique, that same work ethic, those same professionalism.
mm.
Um, but even more than that, like John is such a good guy. He did me the favor of a lifetime a couple times. The first one was he gave me the contact emails of the AEW press people.
Oh wow.
Just to, like, yeah, just to say like, hey, here's some story ideas I have, or hey, you guys are coming to Colorado. I'd love to like cover it. He gave me their email. But then the biggest one was he used to host a podcast with Eric Bischoff,
Mm.
Strictly Business. And I love that podcast. I think that's so fascinating. But he was close with Eric, and I told John that for years and years, pretty much my entire wrestling writing career, it had been a dream of mine to interview Eric Bischoff, because one, he's just a legend in the space, but two, he also lives in Wyoming. He lives like a couple
Oh
hours away
yeah.
from me, and so it just always seemed like something that was like right right within my grasp. Maybe if something could happen, like I just needed something good to kind of turn. And that something good was John Alba because I mentioned to him that it was a dream of mine. And John Alba, who didn't know me, who didn't know anything about me, he didn't owe me anything, but he was like, you know what, let me talk to Eric and I'll see what I can do. And he reached out to Eric. Eric reached out to me, and we actually ended up setting up an interview. And I got to go down to Cody and spend like 2 or 3 hours at the world famous Irma Hotel in Cody, just kind of having a drink with Eric and interviewing him. And that's the second story that I am most proud of writing. And it wouldn't have happened without John. And he did that, and he had no reason to. He didn't
Mm.
do it. There was nothing for him to gain. He just did it because that's the type of guy he is.
It's really, really cool, my friend. As we look at wrapping this up, because I've taken up a lot of your time today, for people that may not know, we had a lot of technical difficulties when it came to starting this. So I really appreciate Nick's time on this.
Oh, of
We
course.
Before we do my wrap-up questions, I'm curious to know what you've chased your dream, dude. You've completely chased your dream, whether it be podcasting, writing, and wrestling, and everything in between. So, what is your advice for people like that want to be in this space?
That's a really good question. You're very good at your job, by the way, Tom. Yeah, no, you're very good. And like I told you offline, you're a huge inspiration to a lot of people. So this has been a really cool thing for me. So thank you. Everybody that I've heard answer that question kind of has a similar idea. And that idea is if you're doing this to get rich or to get famous or to make a name for yourself, like that's not how you're going to do it. You need to do this because you love it
Mm,
and because you just like to do it because very few people will get rich writing about professional wrestling. There's maybe, and I wouldn't even say rich, but there's maybe five or 10 people that make like a decent living doing this.
yeah, yeah.
And Sean Ross Sapp has said that he spent the first half of his career writing for free. And I think that's what you need to do. You need to do this because you love it. And I'm lucky enough that I have a job that affords me, like I can live off of what I do in my day job. So this wrestling writing stuff, I do just for fun. And sometimes I make money from it. Like sometimes, I'll get a few bucks, but I think I think if you're doing this because you love it, then you'll never have a bad day at work. And so if you do a video and you don't get as many viewers, if you're doing it because you love it and just because you enjoy spending a couple hours talking about wrestling with a couple of friends, like it's worth it. And
Mm.
so my advice is just do this stuff because you love it. Do it because it's a fun thing to do. Um, and don't give up if you don't immediately see the reaction or the response or the success that you want right away. Just keep doing it. Do the work.
That's really, really cool. And a beautiful way to end this, if I'm honest, Nick. You brought up success there, and I'm curious to talk about because something I'm really fascinated by is whether it's success and legacy and things like that. Do you view your career in the wrestling media space, my friend, as a success? And if you stepped away tomorrow, what would you want your legacy to be?
That's a really good question. I think yes, it is a success because my biggest goal when I got into it was to write for PWI and to like see my name in print. And I've gotten to do that a few times now. I've gotten to interview Leo Rush. I've gotten to interview AJ Francis. Um, Kind of combining my two worlds, I got to interview Matt Cardona and Ethan Page about wrestling action figures, which
Oh
I
yeah.
yeah, I'm a huge wrestling action figure collector, and so that was a dream come true. So if I walked away tomorrow, I wouldn't have any regrets. Are there still things that I want to do in this space? Of course, I want to write for Fightful, or of course, I want to interview Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. The biggest goal that I have right now, and I'm just now starting to kind of put the puzzle pieces together is I really want to carve a name for myself writing about mental health and addiction in the world of professional wrestling. I've been lucky enough to speak to a few wrestlers and wrestling personalities these last couple of weeks about that topic, and that's something that I think is really important. I think the
Mm.
timing right now is great. LA Knight just said on SmackDown, like, hey, if you're a man, it's okay to cry and it's okay to like express your feelings and whatnot. I want to shine more of a light on the mental health and addiction realm that makes up pro wrestling. And so that's a big goal of mine. But everything else I've done, I'm very proud of. And my legacy, it's kind of what I told you. I texted the TNA guy is I want to be known as somebody that makes the wrestling world better. I want to be known as somebody that doesn't tear wrestlers or wrestling personalities down. I want to be known as somebody that lifts them up. And so that's what I want my legacy to be.
That's really, really cool and a beautiful way to end this, Nick. But before we do, we're going to do the classic Tom Talk Rubbish wrap-up segment that is called Generic Wrestling Questions. Those of you that
Nice.
have
Can't
seen
wait.
my interviews before will know this where I'll ask Nick his favourite match of all time, favourite pay-per-view card, such as Double or Nothing 2019, his favourite wrestler's entrance theme, favourite tag team, and favourite wrestler. Basically, the questions I assume you're asked on social media or at events. So now you'll have a place to be like, guys, I have answered this. Please
Yeah.
go with this. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
Oh man, my favorite match of all time. You know what? I actually have not really thought about these a whole lot. I think the match that made me feel the most was can it be a twofer because they're kind of connected. It was
Mm,
WrestleMania 30 when Daniel Bryan fought Triple H and then fought Batista and Randy Orton. Those, I mean, I assume you were around for the Yes movement
I
and
definitely
that whole
was.
story. I was fully on the Yes Movement train. Daniel Bryan was my favorite wrestler. And just finally seeing him beat Triple H, who in our minds was holding him down, and then to go on and win the world title like that. When people say wrestling is fake, I point them to like my reaction to that match when I had like legitimate tears in my eyes. You know,
Mm.
that's not fake.
Well, that's really, really cool, my friend. What about your favorite pay-per-view card overall?
Sure. So it is a tie between WrestleMania 30 and um was it all in when CM Punk first came back and fought
All
Darby
Out
Allin?
2021?
All Out 2021. Yeah.
You're talking
Um
about when Danielson and Cole debuted, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah,
That was another pay-per-view that just like wow, that put AEW on a whole nother level for me and it was so fun to watch.
do you think, as somebody that grew up around X7 time, with X7 being considered WWE's best pay per view overall, do you think All Out 2021 is AEW's version of WrestleMania 17?
Yeah, I would say yeah, because the energy coming out of that show was palpable because you had CM Punk, you had Adam Cole, you had Bryan Danielson, you had Kenny Omega, you had the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers in that incredible match that they had. Man, yeah, I would say that was AEW's best pay-per-view.
That's really, really cool. And what about your favorite wrestler's entrance theme, Nick?
Favorite wrestler's entrance theme. I think Kane's original like 97, 98 entrance and theme music. I just thought that was so cool. Kane, like when you think of pro wrestling superheroes or supervillains, like Kane is who I think of. Not a big fan of who like the man behind the mask is these days, but the character Kane was out of this world.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite tag team?
My favorite tag team. I I'm comfortable saying the Young Bucks. I think the Young Bucks kind of changed the game in the same way that Colt Cabana kind of is one of the godfathers of AEW and of making independent pro wrestling like a decent way to make a living. I think the Young Bucks absolutely changed the wrestling industry just behind the scenes. That's not even including like what they do in the ring, which is incredible. So, Young Bucks.
Best Young Bucks match for you?
I I think it was either that tag team cage match with the Lucha Brothers or their match against Kenny Omega and Adam Page. I forget what pay-per-view it was at, but I
Revolution 2020, the
look at
last
you,
pay-per-view before the pandemic, my friend.
you wrestling nerd. Yeah,
Yes,
that
I
was.
know, I know.
I think that the storytelling in that mixed with the athleticism, like that's what I still go back and watch that match. That was incredible.
That's really, really cool, my friend. And then finally, Nick, the biggest generic question, in my opinion. We spoke about him a lot today, but who's your favorite overall wrestler of all time?
That would be the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. He was the first wrestler I ever saw. He had that perfect mix of athleticism and character. I love his personal story of kind of dealing with his own mental health and addiction issues, and then finding God, but also just like finding peace and like kind of coming to terms with his own trauma and stuff, and then coming back and being the person that he is now. He's a total package for me, with all due respect to Lex Luger.
Hmm. Shawn Michaels 90s, Shawn Michaels, or Shawn Michaels 2002 to 2010?
Oh, that's tough because DX Shawn Michaels was my favorite like character version of Shawn Michaels because he was such a jerk, but he was so funny. But I think 2002, he would have had a Hall of Fame career if he never came back in 2002. But I
Hmm.
think the matches that he put on when he came back far out exceed the 90s Shawn Michaels. So wrestling wise, I'd say 2002 to 2010, but character wise, I liked when he was a bad boy.
Fair enough. Just quickly, because I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on this match. 2018 comeback, yay or nay?
Oh, we don't talk about that, Tom.
Fair
We don't
enough.
talk about that.
Fair enough, my friend.
I'm I'm begging him to fight Kevin Owens just so that since him and Taker can't be his official last match, at least maybe that could be because that tag team match was atrocious.
That's really, really cool, my friend. As we wrap this up, Nick, obviously I want to say thank you for a great conversation. But the question I end this show on, we've talked about it a little bit today. The question I end this show on is I believe as YouTubers, podcasters, even just people with social media, we're all sort of gonna live forever in a very, very weird way if you think about the word. So what is one piece of content you're like, I'd like to be remembered? Then what is one that you're like, nah, you can forget about that?
Oh man. In terms of work that I've done, um, I would love people to read and remember the story I wrote about the wrestling club.
Hmm.
I think, and not even because of me, and not because that I wrote it, but just the fact that Vic is doing what he's doing and is changing kids' lives through professional wrestling. I think he's one of pro wrestling's greatest stories, and I was honored to be able to write that. In terms of things people can forget, there's a few headlines that I've come to regret. The Tessa Blanchard and Moose one being one of them. So yeah, just forget that happened, especially if you are Ross from TNA's PR department.
I understand what you're saying completely there. Obviously, I want to say thank you for a great conversation to Nick, but please promote
Tom, this
yourself.
been a blast.
Let people find you, your work, etc.
Sure. So I am on Twitter/X at Western Rebel. Um, easy to say, easy to spell. I write for bodyslam.net, so give them a follow. There's a lot of talented people there that are doing great work. I'm honored to be a part of that. I'm featured in various editions of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, so pick those up. I write for Fangoria, for Dread Central if you like horror movies. And those are kind of the big ones. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter.
It's well worth doing, guys. One of the hardest working people in this space, but one of the nicest as well. So if you guys
You
like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Tom Talk Flourish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or X at Tom Talk Flourish. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.